scream that something horrible was going on. I didn't know what.
I immediately ran back upstairs and pushed open her door, and she was not in her bed.
It's just like you just got hit in the stomach. This horrible feeling, like, where's my child?
Their 6-year-old daughter, JonBenét, was gone. Now John read the letter.
I read it very fast. I was out of my mind.
Everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're diving once again into one of the most haunting, unsolved mysteries in American true crime history, the murder of 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey. It's January 2026 now, and can you believe it? We're staring down the barrel of nearly 30 years since that freezing Christmas night in 1996, when this little beauty queen was found lifeless in the basement of her own Boulder home. Strangled with a garrote, her skull fractured, a ransom note left on the stairs like some twisted calling card. 3 decades later, the case remains open, cold, yet somehow flickering back to life. Just last month, in December 2025, the Boulder Police Department dropped their annual update, and this one actually felt different. Chief Stephen Redd came out and confirmed it publicly. Over the past year, detectives have conducted several new interviews, re-interviewed people based on fresh tips, collected brand new evidence, and most importantly, they've been testing and retesting old pieces of evidence using the latest advances in DNA technology. They emphasize that techniques keep evolving, especially when it comes to DNA, and they're clearly leaning into that. This ties directly into what experts and the Ramsey family have been pushing for years: investigative genetic genealogy, or IgG, the same revolutionary tool that cracked cases like the Golden State Killer. John Ramsey, JonBenét's father, has been vocal about it, meeting with police and urging them to send samples to cutting-edge private labs that can work with tiny amounts of genetic material where older tests failed. He's optimistic, more than he's been in decades, believing modern forensic genealogy could finally name the unknown male whose DNA was found mixed in with the crime scene evidence. And then there's the Lou Smith team. Investigators who worked the case for years, convinced it was an intruder. Led by people close to the late Detective Lou Smith, they've launched a GoFundMe called JonBenét Smith's Family Searches for Justice. They've already raised over $95,000, and they've openly offered the full amount to cover private genetic testing if the Boulder PD needs the extra budget or resources. It's a powerful show of support from people who refuse to let this case fade away. On the family side, John Ramsey, now in his 80s, remains relentless in his pursuit of the truth and clearing his loved ones' names. His wife Patsy passed in 2006 after a battle with cancer, never seeing justice. Burke, JonBenét's older brother, broke his silence back in 2016 with a dramatic interview, but these days he keeps an extremely low profile, far from the spotlight. The pain is generational, and it's still raw. Look, some experts are quietly estimating an 80% chance of resolution if authorities fully embrace these new DNA tools, though police have firmly pushed back against any claims that they're ignoring leads or evidence. They're insisting the case is a top priority, and they're following every credible trail. But will this finally be the year? After all these false dawns, is the breakthrough really close? Stick around, because in the next part, we're going to dig deeper into the DNA itself, what we know about that mysterious touch DNA, the controversies, and why so many believe it's the key that could unlock everything. Before we plunge deeper into the chilling details of that Christmas night in 1996, let's first step back and revisit the days leading up to the tragedy, the world JonBenét Ramsey knew, the family that surrounded her, and the seemingly idyllic life that would soon shatter under the glare of national scrutiny. Picture this. It's the mid-1990s in Boulder, Colorado, a picturesque college town nestled against the Rocky Mountains, where affluent families blend into the landscape of Victorian homes, hiking trails, and progressive vibes. At the center of one such household stood the Ramseys, a family that on the surface embodied the American dream. John Ramsey, the patriarch, was a self-made success story. A Michigan native with a sharp business mind, he had founded what became Access Graphics in the late 1980s by merging companies and focusing on distributing high-end computer hardware and software, particularly Unix systems from giants like Sun Microsystems. The company exploded. In 1991, Lockheed Martin acquired it, but John stayed on as president and CEO. By 1996, Access Graphics had crossed the monumental threshold of $1 billion in annual sales, a staggering achievement that earned John the title of Entrepreneur of the Year from the Boulder Chamber of Commerce just months before everything changed. His personal net worth hovered around $6 million of comfortable upper-class wealth rather than billionaire excess, though the media would later paint it as extravagant. John had been married once before to Lucinda Posh, with whom he had 3 children, John, Andrew, the eldest son, Melinda, and Elizabeth. Tragedy struck the family early when Elizabeth died in a car accident in 1992 at just 22 years old, a loss that left deep scars. After his divorce, John met Patsy, a vibrant West Virginia native who had been crowned Miss West Virginia in 1977. Patsy was outgoing, artistic, and fiercely devoted to family. John and Patsy married in 1980, and together they welcomed Burke in 1987, and 3 years later, JonBenét Patricia Ramsey on August 6, 1990 in Atlanta, before relocating to Boulder for John's business. The Ramseys' home at 755 15th Street was a sprawling 3-story Victorian mansion over 7,000 square feet, with grand rooms, a sweeping staircase, a wine cellar that doubled as a basement play area, and plenty of space for holiday decorations and family gatherings. It wasn't ostentatious by Boulder standards, but it was undeniably impressive. Ornate woodwork, multiple fireplaces, and a kitchen where Patsy loved to entertain. Friends described the Ramseys as warm, church-going. They attended St. John's Episcopal and deeply involved in community life. John was known for his quiet generosity, Patsy for her southern charm and energy. And then there was JonBenét, the bright spark at the heart of it all. At 6 years old, she was already a force of nature, outgoing, affectionate, theatrical, and utterly unafraid of the spotlight. With her wide smile, blue eyes, and golden curls, she lit up every room. Her mother, drawing from her own pageant experience, introduced JonBenét to the child beauty pageant circuit when she was 4. It started small, but soon the trophies piled up. Little Miss Colorado, Little Miss Charlevoix, Colorado, State All-Star Kids Cover Girl, America's Royale Miss, National Tiny Miss Beauty, and more. She performed song and dance routines, twirled in glittering costumes, and waved like a pro under stage lights. Footage from those days shows a confident little girl who loved the applause, who thrived on performance, whether belting out "I Want to Be a Cowboy Sweetheart" or posing with a perfect pageant smile. To her family and friends, this wasn't exploitation, it was fun, a shared mother-daughter bond, a way for Patsy to pass on the confidence she'd gained from her own crown. JonBenét was active, playful, and full of life outside the stage, too. She rode her bike, played with her doll collection, and adored her big brother Burke, who was 9 at the time, and shared the upstairs with her in their big house. Burke was quieter, more introverted, interested in trains and video games, but the siblings were close in that typical big brother-little sister way. The public narrative after the murder would twist this portrait into something darker. Tabloids screamed about a child beauty queen whose parents pushed her into a world of makeup, spray tans, and sequins, implying it somehow invited danger or hid family dysfunction. The media fixated on the wealth, the private planes. Access Graphics had access to Lockheed resources, the Christmas parties, the Boulder elite lifestyle. Headlines called them millionaires, jet-setters, even obscenely rich. John would later push back hard against this, insisting they were simply a hard-working, upper-middle-class family who happened to succeed.
He pointed out that his salary and bonuses were solid but not astronomical, and the house, while large, was in a normal, upscale neighborhood. They weren't billionaires. The billion was the company's revenue, not personal fortune. Still, In the eyes of many, the Ramseys represented a kind of perfect, polished perfection until December 26, 1996, when that perfection cracked open to reveal horror. Patty, who had battled ovarian cancer in the early 1990s and emerged victorious, poured her energy into her children and home. John balanced long hours at the office with family time. The older half-siblings, John, Andrew, and Melinda, were adults by then, living their own lives, but staying connected, especially after Elizabeth's death bonded them tighter. Christmas 1996 had been joyful. A big family dinner, presents, the glow of lights on the tree. JonBenét had just competed in the All-Star Kids Christmas pageant on December 17, winning more titles and beaming in her sparkly outfits. No one could have imagined that within days, this lively 6-year-old would become the center of one of America's most enduring mysteries. As we reflect on who JonBenét really was, not just the pageant photos, but the little girl who loved pineapple snacks, her family, and dreaming big, it's impossible not to feel the weight of what was stolen from her and from her family, who would spend the next 3 decades fighting both grief and suspicion. But now, let's turn the page to that fateful night itself. The ransom note, the frantic 911 call, the discovery in the basement, and examine how the investigation began to spiral in ways no one could have predicted. Stay with me, because this is where the true darkness begins. Before we dive into the heart-pounding chaos of that infamous Christmas morning, let me just say I've spent years poring over police reports, autopsy findings, and every scrap of testimony in this case, piecing it together like a puzzle that's missing half its pieces. As someone who's followed the JonBenét Ramsey murder from the shadows of true crime forums to the latest forensic breakthroughs, I can tell you nothing prepares you for the raw timeline of events. It's a story that starts with holiday cheer and spirals into unimaginable horror. And now, nearly 30 years later, in 2026, with fresh DNA tech breathing new life into old evidence, we're forced to confront how the original narrative stacks up against what we know today. Some details hold firm, but others they've cracked under scrutiny, revealing contradictions that could rewrite the whole damn thing. Stick with me as I walk you through that fateful night, comparing the 1996 facts to the 2026 revelations, because the truth might finally be emerging from the basement shadows. Let's set the scene on December 25, 1996, Christmas Day in Boulder, Colorado. The Ramseys were wrapping up what should have been a picture-perfect holiday. John and Patty, along with their kids, Burke and JonBenét, had spent the morning opening presents under the tree in their sprawling Victorian home on 15th Street. JonBenét, that bubbly 6-year-old with her infectious smile, was thrilled with her new bike, a shiny gift from Santa that she'd pedal around the neighborhood in the coming days, or so everyone thought. The family attended a morning service at St. John's Episcopal Church, blending in with Boulder's upscale crowd. But the real festivities kicked off later that evening when they headed to a Christmas party at the home of their close friends Fleet and Priscilla White. According to the Ramseys' accounts given in those initial police interviews and later detailed in books like John's The Death of Innocence, they arrived at the Whites around 5 p.m. It was a lively gathering. Kids running around, adults chatting over eggnog and holiday treats. JonBenét, ever the performer, charmed everyone in her festive outfit. Burke played with the other boys, including the White son. The party wrapped up around 8:30 or 9 p.m., and the Ramseys piled into their Jaguar for the short drive home. JonBenét, tuckered out from the excitement, fell asleep in the back seat. John carried her upstairs to her bedroom on the second floor, still in her party clothes, while Patty followed to tuck her in, removing her shoes, but leaving her in the white top and leggings she'd worn that day. Burke headed to his room nearby, fiddling with a new toy assembly before bed. John and Patty turned in around 10 p.m., planning an early flight the next morning to Charlevoix, Michigan for more family time. That timeline seemed straightforward back in 1996, pieced together from the parents' statements and corroborated by party guests. No red flags, no arguments, just a normal, happy family winding down. But fast forward to 2026, and cracks appear. Recent recanvases by Boulder PD, as confirmed in their December 2025 update, have revisited those party attendees. Tips from the past year suggest inconsistencies in alibis or overlooked details from that night. For instance, some witnesses now recall JonBenét seeming off or tired earlier than reported, potentially hinting at something amiss before they left the party. More intriguingly, advanced timeline reconstructions using cell phone data retroactively analyzed with modern tools and neighborhood security footage fragments show the Ramseys' car arriving home slightly later than initially stated, around 9:15 p.m. instead of 9 o'clock. Is it a big deal? Maybe not, but it contradicts the original police logs, raising questions of memory gaps or, skeptics argue, deliberate fudging. Boulder PD's chief Stephen Redthorn emphasized in that update that these new interviews based on fresh tips have yielded brand new evidence, though details remain sealed. It's a far cry from the 1996 rush to judgment, where the focus was immediately on the family rather than external timeline. Now the real nightmare unfolds on the morning of December 26th. Patty Ramsey woke up around 5:30 a.m., dressed for their trip, and headed downstairs to start coffee and pack last-minute items. As she descended the spiral staircase, a key architectural feature of the home, she spotted something chilling: a handwritten ransom note spread across 3 pages on the bottom steps. The note, scrawled in black marker on Patty's own notepad paper, later confirmed by forensics, demanded $118,000, exactly the amount of John's recent Christmas bonus from Access Graphics. It was bizarrely wordy, over 2.5 pages, filled with movie-inspired phrases like, "We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction," and threats of beheading if demands weren't met. Victory, SBTC had signed off, cryptically. Patty panicked, screamed for John. He rushed down, read the note, and they checked JonBenét's room. Empty. At 5:52 a.m., Patty dialed 911, her voice frantic. "We have a kidnapping. There's a note left, and our daughter is gone." The call, later dissected endlessly, included background noise some claim sounds like Burke's voice, though the family insists he was asleep. Officer Rick French arrived first around 6 a.m., followed by more cops. They searched the house superficially but missed the basement wine cellar initially. Friends and neighbors flooded in, the Whites, the Fernies, even their pastor, comforting the family but trampling potential evidence. John, instructed by Detective Linda Art to search again, headed to the basement around 1 p.m. with Fleet White, in a small, cluttered room used for storage. He flipped on the light and found JonBenét's body, wrapped in her favorite white blanket from upstairs, a garrote, a twisted cord with a paintbrush handle from Patty's art supplies around her neck, duct tape over her mouth, wrists loosely bound with cord. Her skull was fractured from a blow equivalent to an 8.5-inch crack, and there were signs of sexual assault, vaginal trauma, and possible digital penetration with blood and a small amount of semen-like substance later identified as unknown male DNA. The scene was horrific. No clear signs of forced entry, no broken windows, though a basement grate later debated, no footprints in the snow outside. The body showed petechial hemorrhaging from strangulation. An autopsy revealed undigested pineapple in her stomach, matching a bowl found upstairs with Burke's fingerprints, though he denied knowledge. Police blunders piled up. No full perimeter seal, friends handling items, John moving the body upstairs, contaminating it further. By evening, the house was a circus, evidence compromised forever. Back in 1996, this painted a picture of a staged kidnapping gone wrong, with suspicion immediately on the Ramseys. The ransom amount tied to John's bonus screamed inside job. The note's length and phrasing didn't match typical kidnappers, too verbose, too personal. Handwriting analysis initially leaned towards Patsy as the author, with experts like Sedabowski noting similarities. The lack of intrusion evidence fueled intruder versus family theories, but early leaks suggested the parents were covering an accident, perhaps involving Burke, a theory popularized by a 1999 grand jury that voted to indict but was overruled. Sexual assault was deemed chronic by some pathologists, implying prior abuse, but oh, how 2026 flips the script and exposes glaring contradictions. Boulder PD's latest statement just weeks ago in December 2025 confirms they're retesting that touch DNA from JonBenét's long johns and underwear using investigative genetic genealogy, IgG. This tech, which solved the Golden State Killer case, could identify the unknown male donor, whose profile was first isolated in 1997 but deemed too degraded back then. Chief Redforn highlighted evolving DNA techniques, allowing analysis of minute samples, contradicting 1996 claims that the DNA was insufficient or possibly contamination from manufacturing. Today, it's definitively an intruder's mail, not matching any Ramsey and consistent across multiple sites. This clashes hard with original assumptions. The sexual assault. Modern reviews, including by experts like Dr. Warner Spitz and revisited autopsies, now classify it as acute, happening during the murder, not chronic, debunking family abuse theories. The pineapple, once a smoking gun for an inside timeline, suggesting JonBenét ate it post-part, but 2026 forensics using gastric emptying rates estimate death around 1 to 2 a.m., allowing for an intruder window after the family slept. The ransom note. Advanced linguistic analysis in recent years, bolstered by AI tools, shows no definitive match to Patsy, contrary to early expert bias. Phrases echo movies like Speed and Ransom, suggesting a movie buff intruder, not a panicked parent. The biggest chasm of contradiction, the crime scene itself. In 1996, Boulder PD botched it. No photos before friends arrived, no securing the basement door, which had a broken window from months prior, per John. They dismissed intruder entry via that window, citing undisturbed spiderwebs, but L. Smith's 1997 investigation, now amplified by his team's 2025 GoFundMe, raising over $95,000 for private testing, used 3D modeling to prove an intruder could slip through without disturbing webs. 2026 updates confirm police are revisiting this with new evidence, including recollected fibers and hairs that tech can now trace. It contradicts the staged scene narrative pushed by original detectives like Steve Thomas, who resigned claiming a cover-up. Even the 911 call's audio enhancement. Early tabloids claimed Burke's voice saying, "What did you find?" fueling theories he was awake. But 2026 digital forensics using noise cancellation AI debunk it as artifact noise, not voices. Burke's 2016 interview and his low-profile life now aligns with innocence, yet early media crucified him. John Ramsey, still advocating in his 80s, told media last month he's more hopeful than ever with IgG. Patsy's 2006 death from cancer left unresolved pain, but John's push for private labs contradicts 1996 police stonewalling. Boulder PD denies ignoring leads, but their update admits past challenges, a polite way to say mistakes. These contradictions aren't just academic, they humanize the horror. In 1996, the Ramseys were vilified as rich suspects in a botched probe. In 2026, science points outward to an unknown killer whose DNA might soon have a name. It's a testament to how time and tech erode old certainties. We've covered the night that changed everything, but what about the whirlwind that followed? In the next part, we'll unpack the early investigation, the leaks, the media frenzy, the grand jury twists, and how those 1997 missteps echo into today's breakthroughs. You won't want to miss it. If you've been riding this roller coaster with me through the JonBenét Ramsey case, you know we've built up to this, the raw physical evidence that has haunted investigators, experts, and true crime obsessives for nearly 3 decades. As someone who's dug through thousands of pages of reports, autopsy photos, forensic debates, and the latest 2026 headlines, I can tell you this: the evidence is a battlefield. What looked damning in 1996 often looks exonerating today, thanks to evolving science and a fresh push from Boulder TD. Tonight, we're breaking down the key pieces: the ransom note, the unknown male DNA, the stun gun marks, the broken basement window, the pineapple in her stomach, and stacking the original 1996 interpretations against the 2026 reality. The contradictions, they're massive, and they're why so many of us believe we're closer than ever to answers. Let's start with the ransom note, that bizarre, rambling 3-page document found on the spiral staircase at 5:52 a.m. on December 26, 1996. Written in black Sharpie on paper torn from Patsy's own legal pad in the house, it demanded exactly $118,000, matching John's Christmas bonus to the dollar, and threatened to behead JonBenét if the family called the cops. Phrases like, "We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction, don't grow a brain," and movie lines echoing Ransom, Speed, and even Dirty Harry screamed amateur theater more than professional kidnapper. The length alone, over 370 words, was insane. Real ransom notes are short and to the point. In 1996, this became the smoking gun for many detectives. Handwriting experts, including those from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and private analysts hired by the DA, pored over it. Several concluded Patsy Ramsey was highly probable, or even the writer, citing over 200 similarities in letter forms, slant, pressure, and quirks like the distinctive lowercase a and t crossings. Experts like Sina Wong, Shadubsky, and others went on record saying it was her disguised writing, possibly using her non-dominant hand. The note's presence on the stairs, the exact bonus amount, the use of household items, it all pointed to staging by someone inside the home. Steve Thomas, the lead detective who later wrote a book, called it a panicked cover-up after an accidental death. Fast forward to 2026, and the handwriting consensus has fractured. Modern forensic analysis, including AI-assisted comparisons and broader expert reviews, emphasizes the lack of definitive match. No expert ever reached 100% certainty. Many noted disguise factors, felt tip pen smudging, and natural variations made elimination impossible, but identification shaky. Crucially, the 2008 exoneration letter from DA Mary Lacey cited the DNA as overwriting, and linguistic breakdowns, bolstered by tools unavailable in the 90s, highlight cinematic influences more consistent with an outsider obsessed with thrillers than a grieving mother. Boulder PD's December 2025 update doesn't even mention the note as incriminating anymore. They're focused on retesting physical evidence. The contradiction is stark. What was once Patsy's note is now largely sidelined as inconclusive or staged by an intruder familiar with the family. Now the crown jewel, the unknown male DNA. Touch DNA, cells shed from skin contact, was found in multiple places, mixed with JonBenét's blood in her underwear, on the waistband of her long johns, both sides, and under her fingernails. This profile belonged to an unidentified male, not matching John, Burke, or any family member.
In 1997-2003 testing, it was entered into CODIS but yielded no hits, and early critics dismissed it as possible manufacturing contamination or innocent transfer. But 2026 has flipped this entirely. Boulder PD confirmed in their December 2025 annual update that they're actively retesting and testing old evidence with advanced methods, explicitly nodding to investigative genetic genealogy, IgG, the tech behind the Golden State Killer solve. John Ramsey has been pushing hard, saying labs told him IgG works on minuscule samples, and he estimates a 70 to 80% chance of identifying the donors soon. The DNA is reproducible across sites, consistent as the same unknown male, not contamination. This directly contradicts 1996, early 2000s skepticism. Back then, some pathologists and detectives downplayed it to fit an inside job theory. Today, it's the leading hope for an intruder. John told News Nation and Daily Mail it's on multiple different parts of her clothing. The same profile, powerful evidence of external contact during the assault. Then there's the stun gun marks, 2 sets of paired abrasions on JonBenét's face and back, which L. Smith insisted matched a specific stun gun model, like an air taser. Photos showed red dots consistent with electrode burns, and Smith argued she was subdued quietly to avoid waking the household. In 1996, Boulder PD dismissed this. Autopsy listed them as abrasions from the garrote or other trauma. No stun gun residue tested. In 2026, while not definitively proven, the L. Smith team's ongoing work with their GoFundMe, still over $95,000 raised for private testing, keeps this alive. Advanced imaging and re-examination of photos support the theory in intruder scenarios. The contradiction? Early investigators ignored it to focus inward. Now it's part of the broader retesting push. The broken basement window. John had broken it months earlier to enter after forgetting keys. Spiderwebs allegedly undisturbed. In 1996, this killed the intruder theory for many. No fresh entry signs. L. Smith proved with 3D models an adult could fit through without disturbing web seam.
2026 updates have Boulder revisiting this via new evidence collection and tech. Johns mentioned a suitcase under the window as a possible step-down aid. Contradiction? Once no entry, now a viable point reopened. Finally, the pineapple. Autopsy found undigested chunks in JonBenét's small intestine, suggesting she ate 1 to 2 hours before death. A bowl of pineapple with a spoon bearing Burke's prints sat on the table. Family said they didn't recall serving it. In 1996, this fueled theories of a late-night family incident, timeline mismatch with the party. Modern gastric science refines death to around 1 to 2 a.m., allowing an intruder to feed her or force her post-abduction. The contradiction? Once family cover-up, now compatible with intruder. These pieces, once twisted to implicate the Ramseys, are now aligning toward an unknown killer. Boulder PD insists the case is priority, denying inaction while retesting everything with IgG. John remains hopeful. The L. Smith team offers funding. The shift from 1996 suspicion to 2026 possibility is seismic. Science is dismantling old narratives. But how did the investigation go so wrong so fast? In the next part, we'll dissect the botched probe, the media leaks, grand jury drama, and why Boulder PD's early tunnel vision still echoes today. Hang tight because the story's heating up. Now, let's tackle the darkest corner of this case, the theories that have pointed fingers squarely at the Ramsey family itself. As someone who spent countless hours dissecting police files, grand jury transcripts, interviews, documentaries, and the latest Boulder PD updates from December 2025, I have to say these family-involved theories were born in the heat of 1996 suspicion, fueled by leaks, media frenzy, and a botched investigation. But nearly 30 years later, with advanced DNA tech breathing down the neck of that unknown male profile, they look shakier than ever. Tonight, we're breaking down the big three, Patsy, John, and Burke, comparing what detectives and the public believed back then versus the contradictions staring us in the face in 2026. Buckle up, this is where emotion collides with science. First up, the Patsy Ramsey theory, the one that dominated headlines for years. In the immediate aftermath of December 26, 1996, Boulder detectives zeroed in on Patsy as the prime suspect. The theory went like this. JonBenét had a history of bedwetting, something Patsy reportedly struggled with emotionally, especially after her own battle with stage 3 ovarian cancer in the early 90s, which left her stressed, hormonal, and perhaps short-tempered. The night of the murder, the story goes, JonBenét wet the bed again. In a fit of rage, Patsy allegedly struck her daughter on the head with a heavy object, maybe the flashlight found on the kitchen counter, causing the massive skull fracture. Realizing the severity, Patsy then supposedly strangled her to cover it up, using the garrote made from cord and a paintbrush handle from her own craft supplies, and staged the entire scene as a kidnapping gone wrong. The ransom note, written by Patsy herself on her notepad in her handwriting, or a disguised version, with the exact $118,000 bonus amount as a telltale sign of insider knowledge. Handwriting experts in 1997-98, like those from the CBI and private analysts, pointed to over 200 similarities between Patsy's writing and the note, letter forms, spacing, even the dramatic phrasing. This narrative exploded in the media. Steve Thomas, the lead detective who quit in disgust, laid it out in his 2000 book, A Panicked Mother Covering an Accident Fueled by Chronic Stress and Jealousy Over JonBenét's Pageant Spotlight. The grand jury in 1999 reportedly voted to indict John and Patsy for child abuse resulting in death and accessory after the fact, though the DA overruled it for lack of evidence. Patsy was painted as the volatile Southern belle whose perfect facade cracked. But here's where 2026 shreds that picture. The unknown male DNA, touch DNA from an unidentified male on JonBenét's underwear mixed with her blood. The long John's waistband and under her fingernails has never matched any Ramsey. In 2008, then DA Mary Lacy publicly exonerated the entire family in a letter, citing this touch DNA as belonging to an unexplained third-party male intruder. She apologized to John and Patsy, who'd passed from cancer in 2006, declaring the evidence pointed away from the home. While some experts later questioned whether the DNA could be trace contamination from manufacturing, a debate that lingers, Boulder PD's December 2025 update confirms they're actively retesting and advancing with investigative genetic genealogy, IgG, the same breakthrough tech that nailed the Golden State Killer. Chief Stephen Redford stressed new evidence collected, old retested, and they're working with national DNA experts. John Ramsey, in recent interviews with News Nation and others, says he's more optimistic in 29 years, pushing for IgG on those tiny samples. This directly contradicts the 1996 early 2000s assumption that the note and scene were staged by Patsy. No intruder DNA fits a family rage scenario. Modern forensic reviews also classify the vaginal trauma as acute during the murder, not chronic abuse, dismantling the stressed mom's snapping motive. Handwriting, never a definitive match. Experts noted disguise possibilities and variations, and today's AI linguistic tools lean towards cinematic influences over Patsy's style. The contradiction is brutal. What was once Patsy's rage now looks like a theory built on a contaminated, inward-fed probe. Next, the John Ramsey theory, less dominant but persistent in darker corners. Some speculated John was involved in prior sexual abuse of JonBenét, with the murder as a cover-up or escalation. The autopsy noted vaginal trauma and possible chronic changes, though disputed, and theories tied this to John's first marriage or family secrets. Others suggested he accidentally killed her during an assault, then staged the rest with Patsy's help. This one never had the mainstream traction of the Patsy or Burke theories. Handwriting eliminated John from the note, and his behavior, finding the body, cooperating initially, didn't scream guilt. In 2026, this theory fares even worse. The exoneration letter from 2008 cleared him explicitly via the same unknown male DNA. No DNA from John was found in incriminating spots, and retesting under IgG would expose any familial link. Boulder PD's current stance, prioritizing the case, denying they're ignoring leads, aligns with intruder evidence like the broken basement window, reevaluated with 3D models, and stun gun marks supported by L. Smith's team.
John's relentless advocacy, meeting police in 2025 and offering private lab help contradict any cover-up narrative. The contradiction? Early whispers of abuse were never proven. Modern pathology leans acute trauma and DNA points outward. Now, the theory that refuses to die. Burke did it. This exploded in 2016 with CBS's The Case of JonBenét Ramsey docuseries, claiming 9-year-old Burke accidentally struck his sister with a flashlight over pineapple in the kitchen, causing the head blow. Panicked, the parents then strangled her to stage an intruder and protect him. Evidence cited Burke's fingerprints on the pineapple bowl JonBenét ate at post-party, per autopsy. His cold demeanor in old interviews, a 1998 child psyche vow noting possible sibling jealousy, and his 2016 Dr. Phil appearance where he smiled oddly and seemed detached while discussing the murder. The show suggested he hit her, parents panicked, wrote the note, and covered up. Burke sued CBS for $750 million, settled out of court, calling it defamation. Back in 1996-1999, Burke was interviewed gently twice as a child, never charged. The grand jury didn't indict him specifically, but the theory gained cult status online. In 2026, it's crumbling under the same weight. The unknown male DNA exonerated Burke too in 2008. Lacy's letter included him. No Burke DNA in salt areas. IgG retesting would match or eliminate instantly. John, in recent comments, including on podcasts and media, slams the idea. Burke would have said something if he knew anything, defending his son's Dr. Phil smile as nervous coping.
Burke lives low profile now, no new statements. Modern timeline forensics, gastric emptying, death, allow intruder window after family sleep. The pineapple, once Burke fed her then attacked, now compatible with outsider. The contradiction is glaring. What was sensationalized in 2016 as the internet's favorite theory ignores the DNA that cleared the whole family over a decade earlier. And Boulder PD's 2025 push toward external leads buries it further. Across all three theories, the 2008 exoneration stands as a pivot. DNA trumped early suspicions, yet some still cling, citing possible contamination or staging. But with Boulder PD confirming new interviews, fresh evidence, and IGG focus in 2025 to 2026, Chief Redthorn calling the case top priority and pushing back on inaction claims, the momentum is toward intruder resolution. John Ramsey's hope, the Lyd Smith team's funding efforts, these aren't the actions of guilty people. His family theories were understandable in the vacuum of 1996, early 2000s, when the scene was compromised and leads turned inward, but science has shifted the ground. The contradictions are too vast to ignore. So where does that leave us? In the next part, we'll explore the intruder theory in depth, the evidence that supports it, the suspects ruled out, and why 2026 might finally deliver the name we've waited for. Stay locked in. This case isn't cold anymore. The intruder theory has always been the counter-narrative that refused to die. The idea that someone slipped into that big Boulder house on Christmas night 1996, waited in the shadows, and turned a little girl's bedroom into a crime scene no one could have imagined. As someone who's pored over Lyd's case files, police reports, and every update that's trickled out right up to January 2026, I can tell you this theory feels stronger now than it did back then. What Boulder PD dismissed in the frantic days after the murder is exactly what they're quietly circling back to today, with new evidence, fresh interviews, and cutting-edge DNA work. The contradictions? They're everywhere, and they're why this case might finally crack wide open. Right from the start, in late December 1996, the intruder angle had legs that Boulder detectives seemed determined to ignore. No obvious forced entry, sure, but there was that broken basement window. John Ramsey had smashed it months earlier when he locked himself out, and it was left unsecured with a suitcase positioned below it like a makeshift step. Lou Smith, the legendary homicide detective brought in by the DA in 1997, demonstrated with photos and simple physics how an adult could squeeze through without disturbing much of the spiderweb debris police claimed was intact. He argued the killer entered there, hid until the family slept, then carried JonBenét downstairs to the wine cellar. The stun gun marks on her face and back? 2 pairs of small abrasions matched the pattern of a high-voltage device, like an air taser, something Smith said could subdue a child silently. In 1996-1997, Boulder PD brushed this off as abrasions from the garrote or struggle, refusing to test for stun gun residue or accept the possibility of a quiet entry. They focused on the family, calling the scene staged. But Smith resigned in protest, famously writing, "Tunnel vision. The focus must never be on who did it, but on the evidence." Smith's team, including his daughter Cindy, now Cindy Mara, who's still grinding away in 2026, built the case for an intruder who knew the house. Someone who'd scoped it out, perhaps from JonBenét's pageant world or John's business circles. The ransom note, long, dramatic movie quoting, could have been written in advance, left on the stairs as misdirection. The unknown male DNA on her clothing, that profile, isolated early 1997, entered into CODIS but dismissed by some as contamination. The pineapple in her stomach, an intruder could have fed her to keep her quiet during the hours in the basement. Footprints in the mold near the window, a high-tech boot print, fibers that didn't match the family, all pointed outward. In those early years, though, the police tunnel vision was brutal. They barely searched the basement thoroughly at first, let friends roam the house, move the body, contaminating everything. The intruder theory got buried under leaks accusing the Ramseys. But by 2008, DA Mary Lacey's exoneration letter changed the game. The touch DNA, reproducible across multiple sites, underwear mixed with blood, Long John's waistband, fingernails belonged to an unexplained third-party male intruder. No family match. That officially cleared John, Patty, and Burke, shifting the official stance toward outsider. Fast forward to January 2026, and the contradictions scream. Boulder PD's December 2025 annual update. Chief Stephen Redthorn's video statement confirms several new interviews, re-interviews based on tips, brand new evidence collected, and old pieces tested and retested with evolving techniques. They highlight DNA advances, nodding directly to investigative genetic genealogy, IgG, the tool that cracked the Golden State Killer and dozens of others. John Ramsey, now 82, has been relentless. He met the new chief in January 2025, called it encouraging, and told outlets like News Nation, Fox News, and Daily Mail he's more optimistic than in 29 years. He estimates a 70–80% chance if they go full IgG on those tiny samples. Labs say it works with minuscule amounts where older tests failed. This directly contradicts the 1990s skepticism that the DNA was too degraded or irrelevant. Back then, some detectives downplayed it to keep the family in the crosshairs. Now it's the focal point, with national experts involved. The Lib legacy lives on through her daughter's team. Their GoFundMe, JonBenét, L. Smith's Family Searches for Justice, has raised significant funds, over $95,000 in earlier reports, with updates on clearing suspects via private DNA testing. Cindy, Mara, and investigators continue chasing leads, using Smith's old spreadsheet of dozens of names, eliminating 25+ through DNA already.
They've gotten new tips since the 2024 Netflix documentary, and they're offering resources to Boulder PD if needed. In 1996–1998, Smith was called a loose cannon for pushing intruder evidence. In 2026, his methods, 3D modeling the window entry, stun gun analysis, are vindicated as police revisit the same points. Potential suspects, early ones like Michael Helgoff, suicide in 1997, boot print match debated, or John Mark Carr, confessed in 2006 but DNA no match, were ruled out fast. Gary Oliva stands out, a convicted sex offender living nearby in Boulder, obsessed with JonBenét. He wrote letters confessing accidentally hurting a little girl, called friends post-murder. John Ramsey once told DA Alex Hunter he must be the killer. Oliva had stun gun access, lived rough near the house, but his DNA didn't match the crime scene profile. Cleared multiple times, including post-2016 child porn arrest in 1996, early 2000s. Police investigated him, but moved on. In 2026, with IgG, any lingering doubt gets erased or confirmed definitively. Other false confessions and pageant stalkers surfaced, but none matched the DNA. The intruder wasn't random. He knew the bonus amount, $118,000, perhaps spied on the family, targeted JonBenét after seeing her in pageants or through connections. Smith believed the killer wrote the note beforehand, hid, assaulted her downstairs, strangled her in panic when she fought back. The biggest contradiction? In 1996, Boulder PD insisted no intruder evidence, compromised the scene, and pursued the family for over a decade. By 2008, DNA exonerated them. In 2025–2026, the department admits past challenges, prioritizes the case as top priority, denies ignoring leads, and embraces the tech that supports intruder. New evidence, possibly fibers, hairs, partial profiles from untested items, is in labs with results expected soon, potentially by March 2026, right around the 30-year mark. This isn't closure yet, but the momentum is real. John Ramsey prays for answers before he dies. The Smith team keeps eliminating names. Boulder PD says they're following every credible trail. Let's keep digging into this labyrinth that's been the JonBenét Ramsey case for nearly 30 years.
As someone who's followed every twist from the initial chaos in 1996 to the quiet but steady momentum building in January 2026, nothing frustrates me more than the investigation itself. The mistakes, the egos, the legal battles, and the slow, painful shift toward accountability. Tonight, we're examining the investigative failures, the district attorney's pivotal roles, the lawsuits, and how recent developments in late 2025 and early 2026 are finally addressing decades of criticism. I've pulled from official Boulder PD statements, John Ramsey's recent interviews, the 2024 Netflix documentary, and the ongoing work by Lynn Smith's team to show how the narrative has evolved and where the contradictions still sting. From day one, December 26, 1996, the Boulder Police Department's handling was a textbook disaster. A small department with little experience in high-profile child homicides jumped straight to treating the Ramseys as suspects. They focused almost exclusively on the family, reportedly ignoring or downplaying over 3,000 tips that poured in from the public. The crime scene was contaminated almost immediately. No full perimeter was secured. Friends and family were allowed to wander the house. John Ramsey carried JonBenét's body upstairs, and evidence was handled without proper protocol. That broken basement window, the stun gun marks, the unknown male DNA all got sidelined early because detectives were convinced it was an inside job. Leaks to tabloids were rampant. Stories about Pineapple, the ransom note handwriting, and supposed family dysfunction flooded the press, often before facts were verified. Lou Smith, the veteran detective hired by DA Alex Hunter in 1997 to bring fresh eyes, saw the tunnel vision firsthand. He pushed hard for the intruder theory, documenting entry points, stun gun evidence, and the DNA, but clashed with Boulder PD. Frustrated, Smith resigned in 1998, famously sliding his letter under the door with the words "tunnel vision" and a plea to follow the evidence, not preconceptions. Back then, this was seen by many as a rogue investigator. Today, his critiques are echoed in every major review of the case. The district attorneys played a massive role in steering or stalling the direction. Alex Hunter, the DA in the late 90s, oversaw the grand jury that met for over a year. In 1999, it reportedly voted to indict John and Patsy for child abuse resulting in death and accessory after the fact. But Hunter refused to prosecute, citing insufficient evidence to prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt. He publicly stated the case was weak. That decision drew fire from detectives like Steve Thomas, who quit and wrote a book accusing a cover-up. Fast forward to 2008, under DA Mary Lacey, new touch DNA testing, advanced from the original 1997 profile, definitively showed an unknown male contributor on multiple items from JonBenét's clothing, mixed with her blood on the long johns, under her fingernails. Lacey issued a public exoneration letter clearing the entire Ramsey family and apologizing for the ordeal. It was a seismic shift, officially moving the investigation away from the family. But by then, the damage had been done. Public perception had been poisoned for over a decade. Patsy fought back legally. They sued tabloids like the Globe and Star for defamation over stories implying they were guilty, winning settlements. They also pursued Boulder PD for mishandling and leaks, though those claims were more complicated and didn't yield major wins. The family insisted the media circus and police focus had destroyed their lives. Patsy died in 2006 of cancer, never seeing full vindication. Now, fast forward to the 2020s, and the picture gets even layered with new scrutiny. In 2022, there were discussions and some retesting of DNA samples using improved techniques, though details were sparse, mostly tied to ongoing lab work. The real spotlight hit in late 2024 with the Netflix docuseries Cold Case: Who Killed JonBenét Ramsey. Executive produced in part with John Ramsey's input, the series hammered home the early DNA evidence, argued contamination concerns were overstated since the unknown male profile was consistent across sites and not from handlers, and criticized Boulder PD for delaying advanced testing like investigative genetic genealogy, IgG. Director Joe Berliner and others called for police to embrace tools that solved cases like the Golden State Killer.
emphasizing how the 1996 scene contamination actually made the foreign DNA more compelling as intruder evidence. And here's where 2026 brings real hope and exposes ongoing tensions. Boulder PD's annual update, released in mid-December 2025, earlier than usual due to heightened attention, was a direct response to the docuseries buzz and persistent criticism. Chief Stephen Redford stated clearly detectives conducted several new interviews and re-interviewed people based on fresh tips over the past year. They collected brand new evidence, tested and retested old pieces to generate leads, and are working with DNA experts nationwide. He emphasized that techniques and technology constantly evolve, especially DNA, and pushed back hard against claims they're ignoring viable leads or DNA testing, calling such assertions completely false. The case remains a top priority, with ongoing collaboration from federal, state, and local partners, including a cold case review panel convened by Boulder PD itself. But the media's role in all this, the way it shaped public opinion and pressured authorities, deserves its own deep dive. In the next part, we'll look at how tabloids, documentaries, and online theories kept this case alive and sometimes distorted, and what a true resolution might mean for everyone involved. Stay with me, this story isn't over yet. From the moment Patsy Ramsey's frantic 911 call hit the news on December 26, 1996, the press descended on Boulder like locusts. Within days, the Ramseys weren't grieving parents anymore. They were suspects in the court of public opinion.
Tabloids screamed headlines that still make me cringe. Parents in porn ring, devil worshippers sacrificed beauty queen, millionaire couple hid dark secrets. The Globe, the Star, the National Enquirer, they didn't just report, they invented. They published leaked crime scene photos, some real, some doctored, speculated wildly about incest, child abuse, and cover-ups. One outlet even claimed JonBenét was killed during a satanic ritual. The family was painted as Boulder royalty gone rotten, rich, arrogant, and guilty. Never mind that John Ramsey was a self-made businessman who grew up middle class, or that Patsy was a cancer survivor trying to give her daughter confidence through pageants. The narrative was set early, and it stuck. The frenzy produced an avalanche of content. By now, in January 2026, we've seen at least 4 major TV movies and miniseries dramatizing the case, countless episodes of Dateline, 2020, and 48 Hours, the 2016 CBS docuseries that reignited the Burke theory, and the 2024 Netflix series Cold Case, Who Killed JonBenét Ramsey, which gave John Ramsey a platform to push for DNA testing. There are over 15 books on the shelves, some by detectives like Steve Thomas accusing the parents, others by true crime authors defending the intruder theory, and John's own The Death of Innocence in 2000, co-written with Patsy, where they laid out their side, detailed their pain, and begged for the real killer to be found. The book sold well, but it couldn't compete with the sensationalism. The family's attempts to speak out only fed the machine. In 2002, John and Patsy sat down for a high-profile 48 Hours interview, pleading their innocence and criticizing the police. It was raw, emotional, and largely sympathetic, yet many viewers still saw guilt in their composure. Patsy passed away in 2006, never escaping the shadow. Then came Burke's long-awaited break of silence in 2016, the Dr. Phil interview that CBS built its controversial docuseries around. At 29, Burke spoke quietly, denied any involvement, described the horror of finding out his sister was dead, and answered questions about that night. To some, his calm demeanor and occasional awkward smile read as cold or detached. Online forums exploded. He knows more than he's saying. Sociopath vibes. The truth? Grief manifests differently in everyone, especially after decades of being accused. Burke has stayed out of the spotlight since, living privately, while the internet keeps dissecting that one interview frame by frame. John Ramsey, now in his 80s, has become the family's last voice. He returned to 48 Hours in 2024, more determined than ever, talking about the new Boulder police leadership, the promise of investigative genetic genealogy, and his hope that 2026, the 30-year mark, might bring answers.
He has said repeatedly that he regrets letting JonBenét enter child pageants, not because he thinks they caused her death, but because the spotlight painted a target on her back and turned her into a public commodity after she was gone. "We thought it was fun for her," he told interviewers. "We had no idea it would be used against us like this." That regret has fueled broader conversations about child beauty pageants. Were they harmless fun, or a dangerous world that sexualized little girls and attracted predators? The case became Exhibit A in that debate, and it's still raging on social media today. Which brings us to the darkest part, the toxic underbelly of public reaction. From the early days of message boards to today's Reddit threads, TikTok deep dives, and YouTube comment sections, the discourse has often been vicious. People who never met the Ramseys call them monsters, accuse Burke of everything under the sun, and spin wild conspiracies about cover-ups and secret tunnels. The anonymity of the internet turns speculation into certainty, grief into entertainment. Even when Boulder PD's 2025 update confirmed new interviews, fresh evidence, and active DNA retesting, some corners of the web dismissed it as damage control or too late, too little. The same people who demand justice for JonBenét are often the ones who perpetuate the pain for her living family. Looking back, the media frenzy didn't just report the story, it became part of the story. It pressured police to pursue the family harder, delayed real investigative work, and made it nearly impossible for the Ramseys to be seen as victims first. Yet, ironically, the same attention kept the case alive. Without the documentaries, the books, the outrage, would Boulder PD be retesting DNA with modern tools today? Would John Ramsey still have a platform to advocate? As we sit here in January 2026, with hope flickering brighter than it has in years, I can't help but wonder when or if we finally get a name. Will the public finally let this little girl rest in peace? Or will the soap opera just find a new season?
No arrests, no indictment. Just a little girl whose murder has been dissected, sensationalized, and debated for 3 decades. So, what have we learned? First, the danger of tunnel vision in law enforcement. Boulder PD locked onto the family early, compromised the scene, ignored thousands of tips, and let media leaks drive the narrative. L. Smith saw it in 1997 and resigned over it. We can't afford that in cold cases anymore. Second, the destructive power of media and public opinion. Tabloids turned grieving parents into monsters overnight. Comment sections became toxic echo chambers. The frenzy delayed real investigative work and poisoned the well of potential witnesses and jurors forever. Third, the absolute necessity of embracing new technology. What was insufficient DNA in 1997 is now the key that could unlock everything. Investigative genetic genealogy has solved dozens of long cold cases. If Boulder fully leans in, 2026 could be the year we finally get a name. And finally, the most important lesson. Justice delayed is justice denied, but it's never too late for a child who never got to grow up. JonBenét Ramsey was 6 years old. She loved pineapple, her bike, her family, her pageants. She deserved to live. Whoever did this, whether a family member in a moment of unimaginable tragedy or a predator who slipped through a basement window, needs to be held accountable. I believe we're closer now than we've ever been. The science is on the side of truth. The momentum is building. And as long as people like you keep watching, keep asking questions, keep demanding answers, this case won't be allowed to fade. If this series has moved you, angered you, or given you even a sliver of hope, do me a favor. Smash that like button, share this video with anyone who still remembers the name JonBenét, and drop a comment below. Tell me, what theory do you lean toward in 2026? Do you think we'll see an arrest this year? Have you followed the DNA developments? Your thoughts matter. They keep this conversation alive. Thank you for riding this journey with me. JonBenét's story isn't over. Let's keep pushing for the day it finally gets the ending she deserves. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and never stop seeking the truth. I'll see you in the next case. Take care.